I'm Mark Golub, and in the news, as I'm sure you know already, the tragic events in Jerusalem, in the area where two Palestinian terrorists armed with guns and knives and actually butcher's axes attacked Jews praying in a synagogue in the Orthodox Jewish neighborhood of Har Nof. And the Palestinians murdered 4 rabbis, wounded many more. The 4 rabbis who were wounded were Rabbi Moshe Tursky, 59 years old, member of the Boston community, part of a celebrated Hasidic dynasty. Rabbi Avraham Shmuel Goldberg, 68 years old. Rabbi Aryeh Kopinski, 43 years old. Rabbi Kalman Levine, 55 years old. And again, you have 3 American rabbis and 1 British rabbi. And it has rocked the Jewish world. Many of us woke up this morning to learn of the events. And the question now is, number one, how is Israel internalizing this event? And what's it mean for the immediate future? And for some insight, I'm joined by a very special friend. You know him well from JBS and L'chaim, and you've heard him many times. Danny Ayalon, who's the former Deputy Foreign Minister of the State of Israel. Danny, I know it's late in Israel. Thank you so much for waiting up and spending a moment with us.
Thank you, Mark, and always thank you for your very kind and important words.
Thank you. Danny, I first want to tell you that everybody I speak with here in America, Jew and non-Jew, and we did a program earlier today, and there were non-Jews who were calling. Every American feels so much for the pain of you and your friends and your colleagues, and for the Israeli people. It is a horrific thing that you have had to deal with. And just know, first of all, our hearts go out to you, and we are with you 100%.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And this really is a part of what makes us going, because we understand what we're up against. And actually what we're up against is what all of us, you in America, and indeed the entire free world, the entire Judeo-Christian world, the entire civilized world is facing. And this is a very, very barbaric, ruthless, really cowardly Islamist terrorism. And we just have to connect the dots between Hamas and Palestinian terrorists and IS and ISIL, Al-Qaeda, and all of them. What we do specifically see in Jerusalem right now, Mark, is that an attempt by the Palestinians to really turn what seemingly is a national or territorial conflict with the Palestinians into a religious one. Mm-hmm. And the escalation tonight is that they specifically attack, a sacred, a holy place, a synagogue, in the middle of the Shacharit, the morning prayer. This is something which is so incomprehensible.
Yes.
But at the same time, it just strengthens our resolve.
Danny, when you talk to, again, your colleagues, and you spent many, many years inside the most innermost circles of the Israeli government, when you speak to people yourself now, to what extent is this seen as an isolated event by individual lunatics who are just driven by some kind of hatred of the Jewish people and the state of Israel? To what extent do you feel it is some form of a coordinated assault against Israel and the Jewish people?
Well, Mark, nobody here in the professional fields, be it security, government officials, and anyone in the know, anyone who has been really following the Palestinian terrorism, nobody sees it as isolated cases, and certainly not the series, which is ever getting intensified now. Just in the past 2 weeks, we have lost 9 civilians, including 1 baby, 3 months old, and women and children. It's just amazing. There is a culture of hatred here, and there is a motivation. There is a spiritual guiding here from Hamas in Gaza, from Islamists. I must say also, very disappointing, some Israeli Islamists We also have our own Islamists in the Israeli Arab community, and also the Palestinian Authority, either by design or by default. All of those guys, all these terror organs are putting Jerusalem in the center, and they all have their own motivations. The Palestinians and Mahmoud Abbas, which I don't think his ideology is any different than Arafat. He may be trying to look a little bit more pragmatic. He talks against terror, but at the same time, he encourages it through his incitements in schools and in the Palestinian media, and also by glorifying these terrorists, by giving them citations, giving their families a lot of money, including those who have committed these barbaric murders only a week ago in Jerusalem. So the message is attack in Jerusalem. Right now, it's not in the Palestinian Authority Area A where they're in control, in order not to embarrass the Palestinians and not to embarrass and Abbas, but to put Jerusalem, which everybody, they're meaning, really the city of peace, to really have the streets of Jerusalem run with Jewish blood. This is something that nobody here can accept. And I'm sure, just as we have found our defense, be it against the suicide bombers in the mid-90s and in the Intifada of 2001 to 2003, be it the Hamas terror through rockets in Gaza, we also will find the right way to stop these individuals who are all directed by the same motivation and by the same incitement.
I understand. You know, there's two things I'm feeling. There's a million questions I have for you, but there's two overwhelming things I'm feeling. On the one hand, I just want you to know how bad we feel. And in some way, right now, there are families grieving, both those families that lost a loved one, literally the 4 rabbis who were murdered. And as I heard on the news reports that I saw coming out of Israel, we're not sure whether there will be other people who pass away, but there were many serious injuries. So on the one hand, it's an event that evokes a certain kind of empathy and compassion, and we want you to know we're with you. So that's number one. The larger issue for me, Danny, is what does it say about where Israel is now and what the immediate future is going to be for the people of Israel? And we carried Prime Minister Netanyahu's press conference in Hebrew. We carried it live earlier today on JBS. And one of the things that I saw, the newspaper reporters and the journalists who were at the press conference, they had one theme. How are you going to stop it in the future? And my question for you is, as you look at the kind of insidious violence that is almost cockroach in style, what I mean by that is, you know, if you step on a cockroach, maybe you kill it, but there's 10 more right behind that cockroach. And my problem here is, I worry that, as somebody said to the Prime Minister today, is there a solution? Is there a solution from your perspective, Danny, that Jerusalem can become free of the kind of terrorist murder we've seen of late, where people are driving cars into groups of people at bus waiting for the bus, and now you have 2 people who enter into a Bet Knesset, a synagogue, and literally slaughter Jews in the midst of davening, in the midst of prayer. I want to know, as you look at it, is this simply a reality that Israelis will have to endure? And the question is, can you keep it contained? Or do you feel, Danny, there is something Israel can do that can really put an end to this kind of horrific bloodshed?
Yes, Mark. Well, first of all, absolutely. There are solutions. Maybe they are not perfect. Maybe they're not 100% proof. But I believe we can, like we have done in terror waves before, we can really bring it down into something which I hate to say, but tolerable levels. It could be done through intelligence, through better peripheral defense, and basically we know where all these terrorists come from. I mean, they come from the Arab neighborhoods of Jerusalem. So certainly, if needs to, these areas can be isolated with more checkpoints and with much more security and police, security personnel and police presence. It can be done, and it can bring down the terror substantially. If you recall, Mark, also with the suicide bombers, it took us and the government and the security and the IDF to really go on a learning curve.
Yes.
We were caught by surprise in the beginning, but at the end of the day, we knew how to bring it down.
Yes.
And this is the same thing now. And I think the most important element is the resilience of the population. Because this is what the terrorists want. They want to sow terror and fear to turn actually the population, the Israelis, against its government. But they have not succeeded in the past. They will not succeed now. On the contrary, there is a special sense of unity in the country. And today, we are all Jews, we are all Israelis, whether we are Chilonim, secular, or Orthodox, or conservatives, or Reform, any type, no left, no right. We are all united. And once this is the mode, once this is the spirit, it gives the government the enough time for maneuverability and to find the right things. It's not going to be overnight, but it's going to decrease until we bring it to a halt.
But you say it beautifully, and I hope exactly what you're saying will come to pass. And I understand, by the way, within hours after this horrific event, the synagogue was open again, and people were going in and out, and life continues. And in some way, that, in my mind, is the greatness of the Israeli spirit and the Israeli mindset. That is, no matter what injury and sometimes death is inflicted upon the Israeli, the attitude is we will simply continue to live and live as fully as we possibly can live. Somebody said today, Danny, that this may be a game changer, that there's something different about Palestinians coming into a synagogue and in the midst of davening, shachris, whatever the morning service was for these people, that somehow it is permissible to slaughter Jews in the midst of prayer. I want to know from your perspective, do you feel in any way this will be a watershed moment, or is it, as tragic as it is, an isolated event that will stand and fall as again, an isolated event?
Well, it is definitely going to be a watershed in terms of our defense, where no stops are going to be pulled now. But this is not enough. I think it should be also a mirror, should be presented to the international community. An international community that is justifiably, of course, horrified by the ISIS head chopping. They should be as equally horrified now. There should be not just condemnations, but also specific steps taken against the Palestinian Authority and against Hamas. When it comes to the Palestinian Authority, just as we speak, Mark, they continue not only to incite, but they are trying now, going from a country to country, all the way to the Security Council, to impose on Israel their demands without any compromise on their side.
Yes.
So I think there should be a reckoning where the international community, especially the parliaments in Europe and the leaders in Europe, that they would tell the Palestinians in no uncertain terms, right now, until the terror stops completely, and it is in their power to stop the terror, there is no talks about a Palestinian state or any negotiations. Only if they stop the terror, can we enter into a political process without preconditions. And we will have to take concessions as they will have to take.
Of course.
But also Hamas, which is not interested in any political dialogue or solution. Actually, they not only believe, but they do eliminate and destroy the Jewish people and the Jewish state. The Hamas also pay a price in Gaza.
Yes. Danny, I can't thank you enough for, again, waiting up and speaking to me this late at night. Your words are very, very important. Your perspective is important, and I always appreciate the opportunity to have you share your thoughts with our viewers. We will call you again. In the meantime, one more time I say to you, just understand how much I personally, all the viewers at JBS, and everybody I hear speaking here in America is sending to you our warmest wishes. We are so sorry, but we are with you 1,000%. And I am very appreciative of everything you do for us, Danny Ayalon. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Mark. And the same to you. And what you do is so important. And I think this very sad day, we can only see one thing to end this interview, which I think is very important, and that is Am Yisrael Chai.
Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you, my friend. Amen v'amen. You be well.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was Danny Ayalon, former Deputy Foreign Minister for the State of Israel. And right now we have on our phones a very special person. You hear him all the time here on JBS, and he is everywhere, it seems to be. But right now he's in the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. We have on our phones Malcolm Hoenlein. Malcolm, thank you so much for giving us a moment. Are you getting on a plane or off a plane?
I'm getting on.
Okay.
After a short but important visit here.
Okay. Malcolm, I wanted to talk to you because, first of all, I knew you were in Israel, and I wanted to first have a sense from you what you feel the mood is of the Israeli people in the aftermath of this horrific event in Jerusalem.
Well, I can tell you that people are shocked by this, and although Israel has gone through many horrendous attacks, the brutality, the nature of the attack, killing people at prayer in a shul, the pictures of bloodstained talitot and tefillin laying on the floor next to a body has, I think, touched people in a way that few things I remember recently have. I think there's a greater demand now for the government to take stricter action. And while this is very hard to prevent when you have individuals who may not even be associated with an organization who get up in the morning and decide to kill people whom they knew. Both of them worked. They were cousins. They worked. One in the shul, synagogue itself, periodically as a caretaker, and the other in a grocery store across the street. And people, I can tell you, I was at one of the funerals, and they were attended by thousands of people. Many of them did not know the individual, but were so outraged and felt such a need to show the respect that these people were entitled to. And as you know, one was the grandson of the great Rabbi Soloveitchik and the son of Professor Isidore Twersky, and himself, the victim himself, a Rosh Yeshiva and scholar.
By the way, it takes one's breath away. At the same time, Malcolm, you know, as we look at this horrific event, the question that Jews and Americans in general ask themselves is, how can this ever be stopped? In essence, you said it yourself, that if crazies get up in the morning and want to do something as evil as this, it's awfully hard to stop it. And here on JBS, Malcolm, we carried Prime Minister Netanyahu's press conference today in Hebrew. We had it translated as it was actually going on in simultaneous translation. But one of the things the press kept asking him was, the journalist there, is that, you know, what's the solution to see an end to this? And I guess I'm asking you, do you sometimes feel, Malcolm, that this is the inevitable reality that the state of Israel and therefore the Jewish people are going to just have to endure for there to be a Jewish state? Is there any way to have Israel without people every now and then enduring this horrific kind of assault?
I believe there is. No country should have to endure it. No people should have to be subject to these kind of threats. And I think it starts with the leadership on both sides. The leadership of the Palestinian Authority has to be held to account. They have to know that the continuous incitement led by Abbas himself in their media, in their mosques, in their literature, in their educational texts, it has to stop. And the international community has an obligation to demand it. They support the Palestinian Authority. They give them hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. In fact, it's time that no more excuses, no more avoidance, no more obfuscation, that the Palestinian Authority be held to account. That's one. Two, the government of Israel has to take stricter measures to make it clear that it will not be tolerated, and it can't be stoning of cars driving. It can't be, the kind of attacks that we saw at the Mount of Olives or any other place. Once there is this sense of permissiveness, it will be continued to contribute. It doesn't mean, again, that they can prevent every attack. The police in Israel do a good job. They were there relatively quickly, and there's no way to protect every synagogue in Jerusalem and every institution. But there has to be a clear message to those who perpetrate these crimes that they will not be tolerated, that there will be a price, and whether it's sealing their homes or knocking down their homes or other things that we know as a cultural factor, they have greater significance than it may have in the West. We also have to see to it that the countries outside that engage in supporting Hamas and other terrorist entities are held to account as well. This is not a one-shot deal. This is not an attack just against Israel. This is the kind of barbarism that we are seeing, whether with ISIL in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Iran, that beheading has become the major recruiting tool for terrorist entities. We've sunk to a level of barbarism that's almost unimaginable. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that there has to be a collective action by the international community. No more. And it's not just Israel. Israel is always at the forefront. Israel bears the brunt of a lot of it. But every country today is in danger. You have 20,000 foreign fighters being trained by ISIL to behead people, to kill, to do anything to achieve their goals and to spread their terrorist message.
I want to believe that there is in the Western world an empathy for Israel and a realization of all the truth you have just spoken. My fear is that the Western world is so a slave, Malcolm, to anti-Semitism that now expresses itself in anti-Israel rhetoric, that if we wait for the Western world to take what I believe and you believe is appropriate and warranted action, Israel will suffer seriously in the meantime. And one of the things that I'm always ambivalent about how I ask this question, because on the one hand, I want you to have a chance to answer it. On the other hand, I know there's only so much you can say. But I'm concerned with how the American administration has also dealt with the Palestinians. And I'm hoping, Malcolm, that this event is sort of an eye-opener to the administration, that the Palestinian perspective is one that really says one thing and one thing only: we don't want to live alongside the state of Israel. But I just want to give you a chance to say anything you want about what you think this may or may not do in terms of the American administration's perspective and what policies it may institute as a result of this event.
I do believe that the constant pressure on Israel, the criticism of Israel over the recent war where it fought to defend itself, and America supported it in the initial days, and now we talk about investigations. When General Dempsey, the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff himself, said that Israel went to extraordinary measures to protect civilian lives, and who is a better expert to determine that than he is? And the United Nations, by the way, holding several investigations of Israel. But when they see this criticism, when they see that when Israel responds to terrorism, they get more isolated by the international community, they get more criticized, then that rewards them. It's an inducement and an encouragement. It doesn't mean that Israel can't be pulled and there can't be disagreements. But when you have this constant barrage of criticism and of one-sided criticism, and always told that Abbas is better than the alternative, and, we have to pressure the side they can deliver, and therefore Israel gets beaten up all the time. It has to stop, and there has to be a message to the other side. Your aspirations will not be fulfilled. Your lives will not be made easier. The community has to hold them to account. The parents have to be held to account. There has to be a price for such barbarism. Just think if this becomes the inspiration, as Mohammed Marra in Toulouse, when he killed the 3 little Jewish children, hundreds of French guys went to Syria to fight with ISIS. You want to see that these guys now inspire hundreds of Palestinian youth to go and carry out similar acts or to join ISIS and train to become terrorists, then come back to kill? And every country in the world today faces it because all of us have people who are now fighting and training in Syria under the guidance and tutelage of these mass murderers.
Yes. Malcolm, I simply wanted to hear your voice today. This is a day of, in some way, Jewish mourning all over the world. Hopefully it's mourning by anyone of conscience who understands what people of goodwill are trying to do in this world. And so for you to let me find you in the Ben Gurion airport and to spend a few moments with us is very sweet of you. You have a good, safe trip back. And then when you're back in the States, we'll continue the conversation. But thank you very, very much, Malcolm.
Thank you. And I want to just add one thing, that all of your viewers should think about the unity that emerged today, that we saw during the summer. It can't be just when there are tragedies and deaths and injuries. We have to continue. We have to stand together. We have to stand with the people of Israel. That is the strongest message we can send to defeat the terrorists.
Beautifully said, Malcolm. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Malcolm Hoenlein, who is the Executive Vice Chairman of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, and it is a privilege to be able to present him to you on JBS as often as we do. He is a dear, dear friend, and you know I love him very much. One personal note real quick. As Malcolm said, when I learned of this tragedy, it took my breath away. And I wanted to say to the Israeli people, I wanted to sort of put my arms around them and say, enough is enough, and I'm really sorry. And we lost good people today, wonderful people who are doing wonderful things on the Jewish scene. But nobody here at JBS had expected this. We had a whole day of other activities planned. And I just want to thank publicly the staff that surrounds me here at JBS. And I'm the face you see. But the reality is there are wonderful people who are committed enormously to the well-being of the Jewish people. And this is a nonprofit organization just like, ADL and AJC, and all of us are doing the same thing. We're trying to enrich Jewish life and to enhance the Jewish future. So I want you to know the people here deserve a great deal of credit, and they get credit and thanks from me. Sloan Copeland, who directs everything you see here on JBS. Serge Goldberg puts together all of the production. Dora Golub is the associate director of JBS. And we had wonderful producers today, Ron Jacobson and Carol Lilienthal, who worked tirelessly to put together the earlier show we did today, as well as this show. And this show will repeat again now at 11:30 p.m., and then it'll repeat through tomorrow. Anyway, I thank everybody on the staff, Tisha Bader, who does our news, and Eli Kohanim, who is here, and all the people in the edit room, Mark Baker and Corey Sivikoff. Anyway, to everybody here, to Jen Weiss, who makes sure so much goes right. These are the people who make sure you get to see what you see on JBS. Until the next time, I'm Mark Golub. Be well, my friends.